Now that you know what the parts of an expression are, you'll be able to simplify the expressions. The way that you simplify an expression is by combining like terms. So you have to identify them, and then you combine the coefficients. Very simple process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify them by drawing a square around them, like this. Remember that I'm including the sign. Then if you look at it as you're just grouping these things together, or it's all addition, it'll be very easy. So I have, ignore the x, and right now I have a 2 and a positive 3. A 2 and a positive 3, if I add those together, gives me a 5, and then I put the variable with it. And then what's left over is this plus 5. It's as simple as that. So pause the video and try the next one, but be careful of that negative x, okay? All right, for this one, here I have these two are like terms, and then I have a 2y and a 5. Those are not like terms. So remember, this has a 1 here. That is very important when you're combining these like terms. So I ignore the x, and I have a 3 and a negative 1, give me a 2. Then the variable is the x. Then I'm going to put in this one, plus 2y plus 5. When you're putting these simplified expressions down, what you want to do is you want to put your variables, and this is kind of, it may sound silly, but it's the way we like it. The variables in alphabetical order, and the constants on the end. And then if you have powers or exponents, if you had x squared, you would put the highest exponent, you would put that term first. Okay? That's something you should write down. Even though I don't have it written down here, you should write that down and have it in your notes, because that's important, and you will get to some that have those higher powers. So let's try this one. This one is big. There's a lot going on here. I definitely want you to pause the video and try this one. One thing you need to be careful of, though, is the minus a negative. In fact, before you even do it, I'm going to give you a little hint here. I suggest you do this first. This is the only time I suggest you change things. Right there, that becomes plus 5x, plus 7, and then this here, those double negatives, plus y. Okay? Otherwise, you're in for a slew of mistakes. So go ahead and try that now. Pause the video. Okay, first I have this, a negative 2x, and a positive 5x. Then I have a y and another y, and then I have just that 7. Now the reason that I circled some versus putting the rectangle around them is just so that I can identify them easier, because they're not all like terms. The x's are together and the y's are together. So first, I have a negative 2 and a 5 gives me 3. Variable stays the same. I have a y and a y. Now remember, that's a 1y and a 1y. So I have 1 and 1. I now have 2 y's. And then I have the 7 on the end. Okay? Now we're going to simplify expressions with the distributive property. The distributive property, you know, exists when you have those parentheses and there's a number on the outside. It has to be distributed to everything on the inside. So when you have those parentheses, first thing you want to do is distribute, and then you'll combine your like terms. So what I have here is a negative 3 that's being multiplied by everything inside the parentheses, that x plus 4. The way that you would do that is take this 3 times the x and 3 times this positive 4. 3 times x is 3x. Remember, when a number is next to a variable, it means multiplication, so that means 3 times x. We can't actually multiply it until we know what x is, so that's how we write it. Then I have 3 times 4, a positive 4, gives me plus 12. And then this plus 1 is on the end. Now my like terms, I have this plus 12, and I have this plus 1, 3x plus 13. All right, on to the next one. Here I'm distributing the 2 to everything on the inside, and I am distributing a positive 2. So I have the 3 is the same. That's not going to change out in front. Then I have positive 2 times x gives me positive 2x. Positive 2 times this positive 5 gives me a positive 10. My like terms, I have a 3 and I have a positive 10, gives me 13. But remember, I'm going to write the variable first, 2x plus 13. That's pretty cool, don't you think? Let's move on to something that are a little more challenging. So, this first one here, 2 times this quantity 4 minus y, and then I have the minus 3y. The reason that this one is a little challenging is because this right here. Okay, some students forget that. So I'm going to distribute this 2 times 4 and 2 times a negative y. 2 times 4 becomes 8. Positive 2 times this negative y is negative 2y. And then I have this negative 3y on the end. Here are my like terms. I have negative 2 and a negative 3 give me a negative 5y. And then the 8 is a positive 8. So negative 5y plus 8. Now, I want you to pause the video and try doing this next one on your own, because it's a doozy. Go ahead and pause the video and try it. Alright, hopefully you realize that you have to distribute this, the 2, to everything on the inside, and the 3 to everything on the inside. Which means that this first part I'm not using, so I'm just going to write it. There, 5x minus 3. I'm not using that yet, so I'm going to definitely write it. You want to write it because what happens is when you combine like terms, a lot of students forget them then. So you just write them down how they are. Then I have 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times this 6 is 12. Then I have 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times this 2 is 6. Now, for like terms, I have a 5x. I have a positive 2x. A positive 3x. And then I have a negative 3. A positive 12, and a positive 6. So let's start with the x's. 5, 2, and 3. So that will give me what? Come on, people. 10x. And then I have a negative 3, a 12, and a positive 6. That will give me a positive 15. Okay? That's pretty cool, don't you think? I think so. Okay. Here is what will probably be the most challenging type of problem. The reason that this one is challenging is because here I have this negative. And here I have this negative. When you're distributing a negative, and you can't forget that. So, when I distribute here first, negative 3 times x gives me a negative 3x. Then a negative 3 times this positive 5 gives me a negative 15. On to this second part here. Remember that if there's no number written in front, it's the same as having a 1. A negative 1 being distributed to everything on the inside just changes the sign of everything on the inside. So a negative 1 times that positive 2x makes it a negative 2x. And a negative 1 times this negative 3 gives me a positive 3. And then I have minus 2 out on the end. Like terms, negative 3x, negative 2x, and I have a negative 15, positive 3, negative 2. So first things first, negative 3x, negative 2x gives me a negative 5x. On the end here, I have negative 3 and a positive 3 and a negative 2 give me a 1. Combine that with a negative 15 gives me a negative 14. Make sure you understand that problem. Rewind if you have to, because that one is interesting. That's all. Goodbye, my friends.